Hello, and thank you for joining the webinar today on lawful interception made easy. I'm Ashley with Pulse Supply, and also joining me today is Mark St. Ange with Telco Bridges. Today our discussion will focus on lawful interception and the equipment that makes it work. During the presentation, if you have questions, feel free to type them into the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll read them aloud and respond as we go. If we've moved to a different slide or we miss your question, there will also be a chance at the end of the presentation to ask questions. So let's get started. During today's 30-minute presentation, we'll provide a brief introduction of our companies and talk about lawful interception, what it is, and how it works. We'll discuss terminology and standards associated with lawful interception, such as ETSI and CALIA. We will go over information delivery to law enforcement agencies and configuration. Finally, we'll talk about Telco Bridges products and where they fit. For those of you who may not be familiar with Pulse Supply, we were founded in 1995 as a distributor of connectivity products. Our clients are typically carriers, large enterprise, and other service providers. Telco Bridges is one of our key partners, and we've been solving network challenges with their products since about 2008. Our goal today is to provide information to you that will be helpful and offer solution ideas that come standard in our products, helping you stay within budget. If you'd like more information about Pulse, our background, or capabilities, I can provide that at the end or follow up after the call. But for now, I'd like to hand the presentation over to Mark St. Ange with Telco Bridges. Mark?
Okay, very good, Ashley. Thank you very much. My name is Mark St. Ange, and I'm responsible for sales support at Telco Bridges. Let me briefly tell you a little bit about Telco Bridges. We are a manufacturer of telecommunications equipment for carriers, specifically voice over IP gateways, also signaling gateways, and transcoding gateways. We're based in Montreal, Canada, where we perform all of our hardware design, software development, production, and manufacturing. Our company was founded in 2002, and we've been supplying telecommunications products to carriers since the beginning. We provide technical support to our products from our headquarters here in Montreal, as well as from our Hong Kong office in Asia. We provide 24/7 coverage for our customers and assist them in running their networks. Today's topic for the webinar is lawful interception and how it is simple to implement it using Telco Bridges products. So let's get started. First of all, at the beginning of this webinar, I'd like to establish some basic understanding about lawful interception, some terminology, as well as some acronyms. Then I'd like to present the implementation of the lawful interception functionality in our products, and very briefly give you an idea of how it's configured for you to actually be able to implement lawful interception in your networks. Lawful interception, in fact, is a service provided by carriers to law enforcement agencies. In most of the countries around the world, there is a requirement on carriers to provide assistance to law enforcement agencies in order to intercept communications and provide information on these communications to the law enforcement agencies. And specifically, this information concerning the communications typically concerns precisely two things. One is actually the audio or the content of the communication, and here we're talking about voice communication. So of course the content is audio of the intercepted call, and the other information that's required to provide the law enforcement agencies is call information records, and there are specific terms that identify these records. These are CDR-like information regarding, let's say, who's calling whom. And so this is the basis of the webinar today, and it concerns lawful interception and how to implement it using Telco Bridges products. First, a little bit of terminology. Lawful interception is the process of non-intrusively intercepting a communication, and here the non-intrusive aspect of the functionality is important because, well, in the USA as well as elsewhere in the world, it's specifically indicated that the interception of a communication should be non-intrusive or cannot be detected by the target or be detected by the person who's actually performing the communication or the person that supposedly is under investigation. And this is exactly what our products do, that is intercept a call in a non-intrusive fashion. Also, some other terms that are used in the industry here is an interception target. This target is usually a person. It can be also a company or an organization that is usually under investigation by the law enforcement agency. That could be the police, could be the FBI, it could be some other agency or some other organization that has the right by law or the power by law to request the interception of calls. And these are in this subject called law enforcement agencies. That is an organization that has by law the power to request the interception of a call. And you'll see we'll use these terms throughout the presentation. Let me tell you briefly how, and in not too much detail here, how the lawful interception feature is implemented in Telco Bridges products, and specifically our T-Media voice over IP gateways, but also in our signaling converters, signaling gateways, or transcoding gateways. Our T-Media voice over IP gateways, you can see a picture of such a gateway here on this slide. Typically, the deployment of these products is used to interconnect two networks, TDM network, so let's say usually the public switch telephone network, and a voice over IP network. So the gateway is able to bridge communications between these two networks. And the process of lawful interception involves making a copy of the content of the communication, that is the audio, shown here by two arrows where the gateway is actually delivering the content of the communication to the law enforcement agency, but also the ability to deliver some call information to the law enforcement agency for the person or individual or organization that's under investigation, or that is the target for the lawful interception. This calling information is involves, and I'll show you later on, but the most important information in there is the calling telephone number, the called telephone number, date, time, duration of call, and so on. So this, in a nutshell, is how the lawful interception feature is implemented in Telco Bridges voice over IP gateways. In some following slides, I'll provide some more detail about the specific interfaces that are used between the gateways and the law enforcement agency. But first of all, let me provide a bit of information about the actual implementation as it relates to standards in the industry. Basically, there are, say, two major standards or recommendations, or two major documents that provide guidance on how to implement lawful interception. The most used recommendation comes from the European Telecommunication Standards Institute in the form of a standard, for which I put the reference here for this European standard. And the other one is CALIA, which is in fact an act passed by U.S. Congress to make sure that carriers in the U.S. will provide assistance to the law enforcement agencies regarding the interception of communications. The ETSI standard goes further than the CALIA Act in that it defines technically what are called handover interfaces, and it defines parameters or defines specific information and the format of information that needs to be transferred from the carrier to the law enforcement agency. These handover interfaces are specified as a physical interface, a protocol to be used to transfer the audio, let's say the intercepted voice communication from the carrier to the law enforcement agency, as well as the interface and the format of the call detail records or the call information that's transferred from the carrier to the law enforcement agency. And this standard provides here a few acronyms, and I've listed some here that are, say, important in our discussion. First is this lawful intercept identifier, which is an ID. It can be a number, it can be a string of characters which uniquely identifies a target for interception, and that target, if you recall, is usually a person or a company or an organization for which the law enforcement agency wants to intercept the communications. In the case of a voice communication, well, the audio or the conversation is identified as the content of communications. The content of communications link, or CC link, is the actual communications channel between the carrier and law enforcement agency, and the call information is referred to as the IRI, or intercept related information, and this is just plainly CDR-like information, and I have some bit more of detail later on about this in a few slides. Let's move on to specifically discuss what interfaces are available between the carrier and the law enforcement agency to deliver the content of communications, to deliver the intercept-related information, and also to exchange a list of targets for which the law enforcement agency wants to perform the interception. So first of all, the intercepted audio, as defined by the standard, should be delivered over an ISDN PRI interface on a T1 trunk or an E1 trunk. But in the case of TelcoBridge's implementation, we've extended that to be able to use a CAS, a channel associated interface, either a CAS R1 trunk to the law enforcement agency, or a CAS R2 in the case of other countries in Latin America or South America on E1, and also the ability to be able to use SIP or voice over IP to transfer the intercepted audio from the carrier to the law enforcement agency. And I'll show you a little bit later exactly how this is done. The transfer of the intercept-related information is specified to be done using FTP or SFTP to the law enforcement agency. And in the case of TelcoBridge's products, this intercept-related information, or the CDR-like call information for an intercepted target, can be configured to be uploaded at regular intervals from the carrier to the law enforcement agency. And finally, The interception target list is information that's provided in the other direction, let's say from the law enforcement agency to the carrier, and this is just simply a list of targets that the law enforcement agency wants the carrier to intercept the communications for. This list is provided as a comma-separated value file or simply an Excel document which contains a unique identifier for, let's say, the person that is under investigation or for which the communications need to be intercepted, as well as their telephone number, and a start and end date for the interception, say, order from the law enforcement agency to the carrier. So these are the three interfaces that concern the implementation of lawful interception as it relates to the telco bridges gateway. Let me discuss these interfaces further using this diagram. This is the same diagram as earlier where I've added a little bit more detail here. What we see up at the top is telco bridges voice over IP gateway, which is involved in carrying communications and handling calls between different networks. And these networks can be ISDN networks, SS7 networks, CAS networks, or voice over IP networks using SIP signaling. The gateway is involved in the signaling and also involved in the transport of the media between these networks. So the gateway is quite easy for the gateway, and it's a device of choice in the network where lawful interception can be implemented. What you see in blue here is the actual content of the communications or the audio of a voice conversation, which is transferred from the gateway to the law enforcement agency at the bottom of this slide. And here I'm showing, as it's specified in this ETSI standard, that the gateway is using ISDN PRI interfaces. It can be a single T1 or it can be multiple T1s. In the case of telco bridges implementation, it doesn't matter. But what the gateway is doing here is intercepting the audio and transferring it live via an ISDN PRI interface to the law enforcement agency, which can perform recording of the conversation or can listen to the content live, depending on their implementation of when they receive this content from the carrier. And then on the right-hand side, what you see in black is the transfer of the call information or the intercept-related information. That is a record which shows that the calling telephone number was this specific one, the called telephone number was this one, the call occurred on this date, this time, the duration was such, and I'll show you later all of the, well, most of the information that's included in this IRI record. And this information is transferred from the carrier that's using this gateway, using FTP or SFTP, to an FTP server at the law enforcement agency's location. The gateway implements the FTP client, and the law enforcement agency implements the FTP server side of this data transfer. Let me provide a little bit more detail about how the audio is actually transferred from the carrier to the law enforcement agency. And what I'm showing on this slide here is this box in the center labeled TMG is Telco Bridges Media Gateway, and it is involved in communications between a TDM network and a voice over IP network. It has access to the signaling information on the left-hand side as well as the signaling information on the right-hand side, and it's handling the media bridging between RTP on voice over IP to TDM voice on TDM links. And what actually triggers the interception of the audio in Telco Bridges Gateway is the telephone number for the interception target that was provided by the law enforcement agency and uploaded to the gateway. So when this telephone number is used in a call that's handled by the gateway, either as the calling telephone number or the called telephone number, the gateway will intercept the audio, provided that the call occurs during the period of interception that's provided by the law enforcement agency, and will send one direction of the audio, let's say to the specific target telephone number on one channel to the law enforcement agency, and the gateway will use another channel to transfer the from audio from the target telephone number to the law enforcement agency. So using two separate channels for both directions of the conversation, and the law enforcement agency then is able to receive this audio, record it. It can be mixed to possibly hear it in stereo, or it can be listened to live depending on what equipment the law enforcement agency has on site. And finally at the top, just to illustrate that this configuration information or the lawful interception feature of the gateway is controlled via the gateway's web portal, which is a web-based GUI for management, operations, and provisioning of the gateway. Let me describe a little bit further about the IRI records that are delivered from the gateway to the law enforcement agency. I list here in this slide what is contained in each intercept-related information record. Recall that an IRR record is a CDR-like record which concerns the interception target, and you see there the information that's provided, the record type, the unique identifier, and I'll give you an example of a unique identifier in a later slide, an identifier for the carrier or the operator, because well, in most cases law enforcement agencies are receiving this information from multiple carriers, so there is a unique identifier to identify the carrier that's providing this information, the direction of the call and the calling and called telephone numbers, and the cause code for the end of the call, and some information about the content of communications link, if that is used in this case, because recall the law enforcement agency may only require the IRI records and not necessarily wish to receive a copy of the conversation, a copy of the audio. Also, another important element of the lawful interception is a list of targets that the law enforcement agency wishes the carrier to intercept the communications for. And as I mentioned earlier, this target list is a simple list of targets for which the following information is provided: a unique identifier, the telephone number to trigger the interception, the start date and time for the interception order, as well as the end date and time for the interception. And maybe the best thing to do here is to look at an example. Here's a sample target list that can be provided. Each record here, or each line on this CSV file format, includes a unique identifier, the telephone number to intercept, the start date and time, and the end date of time. So I've got 3 records here in this file. One here uses pulse supply as the unique identifier, and then the next item in this record is the telephone number, which will trigger the interception. And then finally we've got the start date and time and the end date of time. So in this case, the start of the interception order provided by the law enforcement agency should be at November 6th, should start at 11 a.m. And the -5 hours is the time offset from Greenwich Mean Time. And then finally we see that the interception order stops here 30 minutes later at 11:30. Another example here is on the next line, telco bridges, and then in this case the stop date and time is missing in this record. It means that the interception of the communications for this telephone number should start at 2 o'clock this afternoon on November 6th and will never stop until the law enforcement provides an updated target list, which could overwrite this entry for the telco bridges interception. And finally, another type of entry, which is John Smith with only the telephone number, which means that the interception should start immediately and then never stop until the law enforcement agency updates it. So as you can see, this target list is really simple. The law enforcement agency can easily provide this to the carrier, and this list is just simply uploaded to the gateway as you receive it from the law enforcement agency, and the gateway implements the lawful interception based on this list. And then finally, I'd like to show a sample configuration screen. Let me try to use my mouse here to show you. This is a screenshot from the web configuration interface of one of our gateways. So what you see here, what we're doing is creating a new law enforcement agency. Telco Bridges products can support multiple law enforcement agencies simultaneously, and in this case here we're entering the information for a specific law enforcement agency. So of course we give it a name and we identify which destination NAP. Well, in fact, this is the trunk group that the gateway should use to send the audio to the law enforcement agency. This can be one T1, 2 T1s, 3 T1s, depending on the size of the gateway, depending on the number of simultaneous call interceptions that we're planning. This trunk group can also be, in the case of telco bridges, a SIP destination, an IP address. So this would match to an IP address of a SIP device at the law enforcement agency's location for receiving the audio and possibly recording it or whatever they need to do. Here, these next 2 fields, calling number, called telephone numbers, are not related to the target that's being intercepted, but in fact the calling and called telephone numbers for the channels that are going to be established with the law enforcement agency. If these are left blank, well then simply no calling or no called telephone number will be used. And here, excuse me, this targets definition file is the selection of the uploaded target list. That is the CSV file that's been provided by the law enforcement agency. And finally, here in the bottom half of this screenshot, you see what information needs to be entered in order to transfer the IRI records to the law enforcement agency. So we select here the protocol type, FTP or SFTP. We enter the IP address. for the law enforcement agency servers. We can specify which TCP port to use for the transfer. Username and password if we need to log in to the server. We can specify a path, a directory, to upload the IRI record file to. And then we can specify some parameters here that will determine how often the IRI records will be uploaded. Should they be grouped, or as soon as there is a new record, should the gateway send a file with a single new record in it, and so on. You have parameters here for you to control how you want to transfer the information to the law enforcement agency. It gives you some flexibility to adapt to their requirements, and also to define how you will fulfill your lawful interception requirements or obligations. So in a single screen here, we define where we're going to send the intercepted audio if we do intercept it, and where we're going to send the IRR records to the law enforcement agency. And you can specify multiple agencies when you do this in Telco Bridges products. So that was my last slide. What I wanted to do here is provide an overview of lawful interception, and how it can be easy to implement it using Telco Bridges voice over IP gateways, or how simple it is to deploy it and fulfill your obligations in supporting law enforcement agencies, and that's whether you're in the USA, Canada, or anywhere else around the world, because the implementation is based on international standards. Now I'll have a look at questions that have been entered here, and I'd like to answer just a couple of these questions. We're running out of time a little bit here, so I'll go quickly. One of the questions here is that I have is how much does this cost, or what is the price to implement this lawful interception feature? And actually there is no cost, because the feature is included as a standard feature in Telco Bridges products. Those products are voice over IP gateways that are designed for carriers. They support T1 interfaces, E1, DS3, gigabit Ethernet interfaces for voice over IP. And so as a standard feature, it comes bundled with the gateway. So when you do use such products in your networks, the lawful interception comes included with the product, so you only need to configure it to use it. Finally, I have another question here that says, well, can you intercept voice over IP communications? Well, the answer is yes. Any type of media or any type of interface that is supported by the gateway, the gateway can intercept communications on that interface. So whether it's a T1 or a set of T1s or DS3s or OC3s using SS7 signaling or ISDN PRI, or whether it's voice over IP using SIP signaling, the gateway can intercept the communications for all of those types of interfaces, or all of those types of networks. So I think, Ashley, that's all we have time for. Just like to say thank you for your attention. Thank you for attending the webinar. And I'd like to ask Ashley to close this session now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar today. We hope you found it to be informative. The slides will be available on our website if you'd like to go back over and review anything we went over today. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Bobby Bain, whose contact information can be found on this slide. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.